Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt and welcome to New Brick Workshop. I need to do some tile cutting and so I've decided to buy a tile cutter. I bought this Erbauer 750 watt tile cutting machine from Screwfix and I paid the full price. Now this model is the ERB 337 TCB and it was about £99 roughly at the time of making this video. Now when it comes it needs to be assembled, so I thought I'd take you through that and then I'll do a demonstration. And the reason I'm making this video is that I've had a quick look at the way it's been made and I think it should be quite a good bit of kit. Now it comes with a set of instructions which are not too bad actually. And now what you get in the kit is various components. There's the main unit itself, there's a fence here, there, which fits on, table extension, there's a blade, there's a blade guard which will fit above it, there's a blade guard bracket to hold that in place, there's a plug, the blade is water cooled and so you don't want the water to leak out everywhere, so there's a plug, there's a little mitre device, and then there are 4 feet. Now I think these 4 feet should have been attached when it arrived, but as you might see from this one, all 4 of the feet were stuck to the polystyrene packaging and so they came off. But I don't think that's going to be a showstopper. I'll just push them back into place, but I'm going to clean that white polystyrene off first. And they supply a pair of little spanners for putting the blade on and taking it off and screwing it firmly in place. You'll need a screwdriver, either Phillips or Posi. I'm not quite sure which their little screws will be, but this is a Posi, I'm sure it works well. Well, I'm going to start by putting these 4 little feet on, and it's really easy to do. I'm not actually convinced that they'll stay on forever, but I'm not too worried about that. If one comes off, I can always push it back on, as long as I don't lose it, I suppose. And I think these only came off because the polystyrene was a little bit sticky, I don't know. Well, that's that done. So we'll now follow the instructions and do the full assembly. Now we're looking at the machine with the on-off switch here, and obviously this is the top. This right-hand plate can be removed by just lifting it up and pulling it away. It's got a lug here which clips in underneath here when you need to put it back together, like so. And it also has a little registration here and here, there and there, to keep it in the right place. Now if you look inside here, you'll see this black plastic blade cover. I'm going to remove that and I'm going to follow the instructions to attach the blade. And the first thing it says in the instructions is to loosen off or remove these 2 screws, one here and one here. At the very top, probably can't see it very easily, but there are 2 screws, one here and one there, which we have to now undo, and that will allow this blade cover to come off. That's that one, that's that one. Now, there is a little safety chain on here. I'm not quite sure why that's there. Anyway, so that's that. Now, I had a practice go at this. Now, this screw here has got a little retaining clip, one of those little clip washers, spring clip washers. There was one on here, but it sprung off and I couldn't get it back on again. And frankly, it's not going to perform much of a duty in this case, and so I'm not worried about it. The only thing is that screw could disappear if I'm not careful. So I'm going to just push this to one side carefully now, and that then exposes the arbor nut for the blade. And we'll now fit the blade. Dead easy. It's a normal right-hand thread. We're removing the big nut and also the big washer. Now in the instructions it shows that this side of the blade with the writing on should go such that you can see it from this angle here. The big washer goes on and make sure it sits fully home, and then on goes the nut. Then we're going to use the 2 tools. One is for the big nut and the other is for the shaft. So I put the spanner on the big nut first and then the one on the shaft is here, and I can now tighten this, and you make sure it's nice and tight. Now do be careful, because if you push really hard and your hand slips, this blade, although it's not quite like a saw blade, you can still cut yourself on there, so be very careful. Tighten it so you're absolutely satisfied, and that's that little task done. So we're now going to put the blade cover back on. It's not particularly difficult. You will find though that this top part of the plastic, which has to go underneath the metal part here, only slips in once you get the screws past a certain point. That's that in place, nice and tight. You remember these two screws here, which we put to one side earlier? Well, we're now going to take the little bracket that will hold the blade cover, and it goes on with these two little pieces going under here. And if you look closely, you may be able to see through these holes here that they're going to engage or be engaged by the two screws that we took out from there. So I'm going to put these two screws in. Now at this stage I'm not tightening up at all, I'm just putting the screws in so they don't fall down inside. And then it's a good idea to have a straight edge so that this little guard holder bracket is absolutely in line with the blade, because when you're cutting your tile, the two halves have to go one either side of this bracket. So it'll be a good idea if the bracket is nicely lined up with the blade. And you can use anything that's straight, and I'm going to use a piece of wood flat against the blade. And I'm holding the bracket flat against the piece of wood, and then going to tighten up those two screws. First that one, and then the other one. And after you've done that, do check that that is in line nicely. And I can see from where I am that that is in line. Okay, so that was pretty easy. Now before I put that other piece back in place, I thought I'd show you this hole here. There's a hole there. And that basically is the drain hole. When you've got water in here, which helps to keep everything cool, you need to put the drain plug in. And this has got an O-ring around it, and just push that down in. The O-ring should stop the water from leaking. Anyway, so that's in place. I'm going to put this back where it belongs, and it sort of clicks in place. So here is the blade cover. If you unscrew this, you've got the knob, there is a washer, and then there is a little bolt that goes through. If we put this on here, so that the part of this bracket that's sticking up goes through the guard, then we can put that bolt back in place, the washer in place, and then screw the knob on. And the way this is set up is such that by loosening the knob, you can have this going up and down to accommodate the thickness of the tile. And also you can have it so it can move up and down a little bit like so. And this will serve several functions. The most important, of course, is to keep your hands away from the rotating blade. And the other one, from my experience with these water-cooled tile cutters, is that you get a lot of spray of water. And this will help to keep that water downwards rather than going up into your face. So that's that bit done. Now on this table extension, a pair of screws in the end. I'm just going to take these out because these are designed to stop the whole thing being pulled out once it's been put in place. Taking care not to drop them. So now we're looking at the end, which has got the cable coming here. And if you look to the left up here, there's a little cutout in the plastic top, and ditto on this side. So we're now going to slide the table extension in there. That's it, right, just slightly fiddly to get that going. Now if you look under here, you'll see the actual supports for this part of the bar that goes all the way through. Once that bar is far enough past here, we can put those two screws back. I'll do this top one first. I'm going to go in like so. And the idea of these screws, it stops you accidentally pulling this all the way out. That's that one done, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. Right, so the extension is on the left-hand side as you look at it from the front. There is no provision for having this table on the other side. Now, when I unpacked all the bits and pieces, I found this knob, and I thought, oh, I wonder where that goes. Spare. No, it's not spare, at least I don't think it is. This is the front of the machine, and if you look up under here, there are a couple of screwed holes here, one here, and this will fit in either of those, and I'm going to put it into this one, so that when you've got this fence extension in the right place, you can tighten that knob up and it'll stay exactly where you want it. It won't move around. The next thing we're going to install, in fact the final thing we're going to install, is this little fence, and this can go in actually anywhere from this end piece here all the way through here, all the way to the other side, and to get it on the other side you'd feed it in that way. Now in the instructions it shows this part being assembled, but mine came ready assembled, so I suspect that's something they've changed recently. Now on a really expensive machine, you would, when you tighten the knob here, expect the fence to true itself up so it is absolutely parallel to the blade. That's not the case here. This is a very simple bit of kit, so what you've got to do when you do use this is to make sure that it is parallel to the blade. And you've got some guidelines here, these grooves here, which you use as a reference point, and just use common sense to get that in place. Now the only other part that it goes with the kit, which I've not described, is this little, I suppose it's called a mitre attachment, I don't know, which fits on the fence. Now for example, if you wanted to cut something straight up, right angles, you would have this in the 0 position, 0 on there, and this could be used to push a tile through. And if you wanted to cut something at 45 degrees, set it at 45 degrees, put your piece of tile in here to do a corner cut, you could do that. I don't envisage me using this part very much, and I won't demonstrate it when I show the thing in action, but it seems pretty sensible and straightforward. So that's it assembled. The next thing is to test it, and I'm going to do that using one of the tiles that I'm going to be cutting for the downstairs loo, and I'll do that shortly. Now I'm all set up to do the first bit of trial cutting now, fingers crossed. And before you start, with the machine still unplugged, you are to put water into the reservoir, and it's on this side. It's the right hand side if you're standing with the switch near you, and you lift this cover away to do it. And it says quite clearly in the instructions to put no more than a quarter way up the blade. Now as the blade is hidden by the blade cover, that's just a little bit tricky, but I'm just going to apply a bit of common sense. And I would guess and say that I've probably put about 4 centimetres of water in there. So with that done, I've now plugged the machine in to the main supply. Put that cover back on. Everything looks as though it should be okay, and I'm going to give it a test go by turning it on. Well, it sounds pretty good. So all I've got to do now is do a test cut. Now, safety precautions, because when you're cutting tiles, you'll get little tiny chips, quite sharp chips of tile being thrown up here and there. You must wear safety glasses or decent quality glasses which have got plastic lenses, and you must make sure you're very careful of your eyes. Well, the first cut I want to do is 91 millimeters wide, and so I've set the fence initially at 91 and then measured it and found it's about 1 millimeter out. So I've made an adjustment and I can tighten it up. And you remember when we set up this little holder for the blade guard, we made sure it was in line with the blade. Well, that's quite useful because I can also check that this end of the fence is in the correct position as well at 91, and that is spot on 91 there. So I'm happy with that. I can tighten this up nice and firm. Now the tile I'm cutting is rather long and I don't have an outfeed table. This is a porcelain tile and it's actually quite expensive, so let's hope this very first cut goes well. Now when you get towards the end of the cut, you've got to watch that this back edge doesn't chip out, so take it very slowly at this end of the cut. Well, there's that first cut. I got no breakout at this end, so I'm pleased with that. The edge along here, there's some little tiny chips which have come off. Now that's pretty usual with the sort of tile cutter that I've been used to. They do tend to do tiny little chips along here. Well, having looked more carefully now at the little bit of chipping out on this piece of tile I cut just then, I thought maybe I'll follow the advice of some of the people who've commented on this machine and get a better quality blade. So anyway, I've gone to Tops Tiles and I've bought their premium blade, and here's the premium blades out of its packet. It was about £35, and several other people who've made comments or reviews about this machine have said go to Tops Tiles and get a decent blade. So that's it. Incidentally, they are in the process of changing over from their own brand to another brand, and the first thing you notice about the new blade is that it's much thinner, and also the diamond coating here on the edge here is much broader than it is on this blade that came with the machine. So I've got every hope for this. Should be good. That's all tucked away as it should be. Put this piece back in. That's where it should be. Now, in order to do this test cut, I've got my off cut from the previous cut, and I'm going to just cut it through here and see how I go. Now I did notice when I was cutting the first bit of tile that the machine was slightly noisy, so I'm going to wear ear defenders this time, and you need to make up your own mind whether you think you need them. But I think it's probably a good idea. Now I can see the difference with this piece of tile, and this was the piece that was on my right as I was doing the cutting, and this is the original edge here that I cut with the original blade, and this is the new edge, and that is really, really good. That is absolutely, you couldn't fault that. You could have that on show at a joint that was in the middle of your work with no problem. The other side, that was the piece on that side of the cut, is this one. And again, that's the original cut there from the previous blade. And you see how rough that is. And again, this one is a great improvement. It's not quite as good as what comes from the other side of the blade, but that might be technique on my part, I'm not sure. But that too is a very acceptable standard. And two more bits of advice. One is have a bucket of water nearby, so if you're doing it with your bare hands, every now and again you can rinse off those tiny little splinters of tile, which can be very sharp. Rinse it off. And if you've got a lot of tiles to cut, because of those sharp edges, you could consider wearing some form of protective gloves made of rubber, something completely waterproof, and they've got to go up your arms far enough so that the spray won't go out all the way up here and take sharp bits inside your gloves. The last thing you want is to get any sharp bits of tile inside your gloves. Now, what I quite like about this machine is that it has this little trough all the way around the outside, and water that gathers in there can then run back down into the reservoir. Now, my old machine, which admittedly was about 30 years old before I gave it away to some poor unsuspecting person, was not as good as that, and water used to go everywhere, and it used to spray the operator something wicked, so I always used to have to wear a plastic apron. But this seems to be pretty reasonable, and if you keep the guard down at a sensible height, you won't get a lot of the spray coming towards you. So that's it for the Erbauer tile cutter. Many thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye. Well, the tiling's done. I didn't intend showing any of this tiling in the film, but I need to cut some holes now in these tiles. Now, these tiles are porcelain, and you can't really use this type of drill, the sort of spade pointed thing in these. It just won't touch. I've tried, and it's not going to work at all. So I've bought from Screwfix an Erbauer 10mm diamond cutter. It was quite expensive. I think it was 18 or 19 pounds. Now, the only problem with these is they don't have a tip. So when you start drilling, it's going to try and go all over the place. Now, some people say start drilling at an angle to create an impression and then slowly turn it up like this. But I've made this gadget. I don't know if it'll work. This will go in like so. This piece here allows for the actual depth of the diamond, and I then hold this in place and then start drilling. And I've got lines here showing the centre and centre there, so that ought to work. I don't know. I won't know until I try it, so I'm going to set this up now. Well, I've made a start and it's roughly in the right place. I think I've developed a technique which is made a start with that one. So my gadget doesn't work flat on, but it allows me to control it when I'm doing the transition from there to there. So I'm going to start all the holes and then I'm going to go take this off and finish them off. Now, this drill bit has got a wax core which helps it to cool. You can see just here there's some melted wax which came out. Once I'm through the tile, I stop because I'll be using a normal masonry bit to drill all the way through. And there we are. I've got two nice clean holes already, and I'll now do the rest. So that's it. That was the extra bit. Many thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.